game show that's 3 dimensions away from Alien Isolation getting a sequel. I'm your host 3D Jake, and today we're looking at Alien Isolations, released in 2014. Alien Isolations is a video game that was developed by Creative Assembly and published by Sega, once again. This time around, this is a game is more of a first-person survival game, where essentially you're on this giant ship, that's basically, and you're basically scavenging around, scavenging and trying to survive, while the alien itself is basically like more of an NPC that's trying to look for you, and you have to use stealth, stay quiet. If you shoot at the alien, you'll just like stun it and it'll run away, or if you use a flamethrower. But then on top of that, you have to hide. If you hear and you use this little scanner, they first introduced in Aliens and Alien, where you basically have to hide in lockers and use your, basically it is a stealth survival game. And it is on a large map, so basically it's, it's not like a video game like Dead by Daylight. It's more or less like a game where you're doing objectives and stuff, so it is more of a linear game, but on a giant map. That's the best way to describe it, like a hub map, because you really can go back to these locations, but you're basically scavenging for parts and everything, and on top of that, there is an alien, and there's also NPC, thing called work androids that are working Joes that are also trying to kill you. The game is essentially developed and released in 2014, and this was a game that was so great. These developers paid so much attention to detail. They literally watched the first Alien movie. They didn't watch Aliens. They watched the first Alien movie and said, we want to make a true sequel to that movie. That even though they loved the James Cameron film, they said, we're going to try to make a true sequel that takes place years later. What in between Aliens and Alien. And it's about, Ripley's daughter, Amanda Ripley, is looking for her mother on, because Nostromo obviously went missing. And so basically, she's looking for her, and then of course something happens with her ship, and then she has to go onto this dead ship. And then of course there's working Joes that are trying to kill her, and there's people on the ship. On top of that, there is an alien that is there to kill her as well. Sigourney Weaver does reprise her role as Ripley in the movie. She does reprise her role, especially she's in the opening credits. I remember playing this game for the first time and hearing Sigourney Weaver's voice. And I mean, it was known because Sigourney Weaver was doing press for the game saying, yeah, I'm in the game and everything. And there also is a DLC expansion with her called Crew Expendable, I think. And, that she provided her voice along with several of the other cast members from Alien. And I really think that's great that Sigourney Weaver actually still loves doing this, And I would love hearing her voice. I'm like, oh my god. And, there's also some cool stuff in there if you love the first Alien movie. There's a lot of Easter eggs and nods to the first movie. They paid true attention to detail. I remember oh my god, look, it's this, and oh my god, look. And it does feel like something that Ridley Scott would make, And I've always said, I love the Ridley Scott, what he did with the prequels. In Alien. I love Prometheus to death, and I even like Alien Isolation. But I will say, I like the attention to detail, how this is in the 70s futuristic horror film. This feels like the sequel. This doesn't feel like, okay, they're using, for instance, I had the same issue with Star Wars, where in the prequels, where, okay, in Prometheus, they're using the same technology. They're using more futuristic technology than they are in Alien. So I'm like, what? There's a big plot error there. Star Wars is guilty of it, so is Aliens. Or not, so is Prometheus. And I'm just saying, why? And I like that they stay true to the technology. And I really like that. I really liked, I think the fear of the game, because you're afraid, oh my god, if I hide over here, is the alien going to hear me? Or if I throw something over here, the alien will go try to fetch us. When you hear that, you hear you're hiding in vents and stuff, and you hear the vents come down, and you hear I'm like, oh, I'm just hiding over there. I'm like, oh no. Or if you see a working Joe who was like a robot, and his eyes turn red, oh, he's gonna kill you. You have to run away. You're like, oh shit, he's coming. I mean, you can't kill the working Joe, but you're if I shoot him, the alien will come and kill me. So it's I don't know what to do. I'm just trying to run and hide. And there's also a lot of side objectives and stuff oh, you have to go over here and get this passcode. Oh, you have to go over here, and there's people over here. And then when you shoot at a gas tank and it blows up, an alien will show up and kill them both, and you're just whoo! And also, there is midpoint in the game where you're basically, you get rid of the alien, and then you're just, stuck. I will say that's when the game starts to drag a little, because you're okay, you killed the alien, and then it does the flashback of, the person in first person going to, the alien planet, which I thought was cool. That was one of my favorite moments, when they're going to the alien planet, and then they look in the face hugger and jumps out at them. I mean, you do find survivors in the game, and they tell you have to do this and that, and you go there. I will say, but when you find out that there's spoilers, you haven't played the game, there's a second alien on the ship. That's when the stakes start to go up again. And you're just like, oh, and then you have to do this thing where you're outside the ship, and the alien is outside the ship trying to kill you, and man, it's so good. I do think that it does get frustrating because there are sometimes you got to do something. And then, of course, like, the alien gets to you before it's too late. Like, it does, even on the easiest setting, which I played. Like, for instance, there was, like, a thing where the alarm goes off, and there's, like, because the alien, like, there's, like, you can see where it starts saliva going on the ground. That's where the alien is. So you're, like, there's where the alarms are going off, and you're trying to get past that, and you're, like, looking up at the vent and everything. That's when you're like, oh, please don't get me, please don't get me. And then it's like there's nowhere you have to go over under the vent, and it almost feels like the Kobayashi Maru. And I could not figure it out. I had to get a friend to play that level for me because I'm like, I can't figure it out. And so my friend did it, and then I will say it does. I really do like this game. It's fun. Me and my friend have been playing this game forever. Like, it is a fun game, and I have all the DLC packs. There is basically a level just survival where you basically just have to, like, survive the alien for so many amount of time. And then there also is a DLC with Sigourney Weaver called Crew Expendable, where basically you're like, you're Ripley, and you have to basically play the last 30 minutes of Alien, and it's kind of cool too. There also is some other DLC packs that are just like, I don't give a shit about, but like, I do think that it's really cool that you get to see this. It really is a love letter to the first Alien film, and I will say it is the closest to an open world Alien game we'll ever get. I mean, I love Alien. I love Alien versus Predator, and I like Alien Colonial Marines, and certain aspects of that game I like. And this game, it was really ambitious. And I'm like, there was like even floating around, they had ideas for the sequel, and this sequel, like, they were going to just the Colonial Marines, and they were going to like play around with the fear of being in like the LV-426, and that would have been so cool, But instead, what happened was the game did not do well sell-wise. And so it received critical acclaim around the board. Fans loved it, critics loved it, but it did not sell well. And my only explanation was, I think Alien, because this game came out a year after Alien Colonial Marines, and even the developers said they couldn't really talk about the game because they were trying to keep this game a secret. So Creative Assembly just couldn't talk about it, and everybody was dogging on Colonial Marines because that was supposed to be a big game that was going to come out. And then, of course, it came out flop and tanked, hard. And so this game was like, and so this, of course, I think this was the repercussions of that game. And so the only way I could think of is play clip right here.
We're good.
We are good.
No. We're not good. We're good.
I mean, that essentially, that's essentially what I think. Fans just like, what, we're good, That's what I essentially think. That fans just like, we're not playing this game. You ain't going to dupe us twice, because this is like a $60 game that fans were going to play, and they're like, yeah, I'm not going to pay $60 to play this game that's going to be like a flop. And also, there are people like, well, it's not single, it's not going to be multiplayer, nowadays. And then people are like, oh, come on, and essentially, so that's the kind of like was like the big turnoff was like, I think they could have done a multiplayer mode, and I think if this game would have sold well, we probably would have got that. But I mean, we do kind of have like a survival mode, but it's not really multiplayer in a sense. And I do think this is a fun game. This is a very fun game. And I just feel bad that this game did not do well because, this was an ambitious game. People love this game. I mean, this game has survived. This was ahead of its time because I think this game would have came out now, I think people would have loved it. I mean, there's certainly games that are coming out that are inspired by, like, Jurassic Park Survival. And essentially, like, Dead by Daylight, kind of, like, this was kind of, I wouldn't say the first, asymmetrical kind of game, but it was definitely like the peak. It was definitely like the peak of this game. Like, this definitely was like, look, this game was so ambitious and ahead of its time that if this would have came out in 2019 or 2022, this game would have probably done so much better. I mean, there's games like the Blair Witch Project that came out that were like, Alien Colonial Marines was like the footprint to a lot of these games, and unfortunately, because the repercussions of Colonial Marines, this game did not do well, and so that's why we're never going to get a sequel. And that's what, even though like not Gearbox, but Creative Assembly has said, like a lot of the team members that worked on the game went on to work on other projects, and so the chances of us ever getting a sequel to this beloved game is dead in the water. I mean, maybe one day we'll get it, but it won't be from the same type of developers, and I think it sucks because that was so ambitious and so great that it just felt like it was the best. It's still to this day considered the best Alien game out of all time because it was true love letter to the fans. and unfortunately it was robbed because of a bad game the year prior. And I think if that game would never have come out, I think this game would have probably done really well. If I had to give this beautiful game a score, I would give it a 9.5 out of 10. Thank you so much.
I don't know if you can hear me. I'm stranded here on this station.